So that does actually lead nicely on to what's new for 2024 to 25. I'm going to run through some of the legislation changes, and then I'll pass back to Alice, who's going to show you some of the updates within version 30. So let's just start with the key legislation changes for the new tax year. So as we've just mentioned, tax codes are remaining much the same unless you receive individual P9 notices. And that's because the personal allowance remains frozen at its current level of £12,570. So emergency tax code remains the same. For PAYE, there are no changes to bands and rates in England, Wales or Northern Ireland, but there are some changes that apply in Scotland, and that's to employees that have a tax code starting with an S. And there's an introduction of a new tax band, the advanced rate of tax, and also an increase to the top rate of tax in Scotland. And you can view that legislation within your legislation settings. For national insurance, as we mentioned earlier, the budget announcement was that this will be reduced by a further 2%. So it's reducing from 10% to 8% for category A with effect from the 6th of April. So don't forget to do your legislation update to update that in your software. And some significant changes to national living and minimum wage this year. So with effect from the 1st of April, the national living wage will increase to £11.44 per hour, and it now applies to all employees aged 21 and above. So it used to be 23 and above for national living wage. It is now 21 and above. And the minimum wage rates have also increased for employees under 21. If you use the minimum wage check for your hourly paid staff, that should keep an eye on that for you and alert you if you're paying below those new minimums. For statutory payments, the rate of statutory sick pay is increasing to £116.75 per week, and the standard rate of parental payments, so maternity, paternity, adoption, etc., is going up to £184.03. Student loan thresholds, some of those have changed, so you can see the updated thresholds there on the slide. And for automatic enrolment, there's no change to the earnings trigger or the upper and lower level of qualifying earnings. So all of those thresholds remain the same. You can read more about this following the link on the slide. And if you want to see these legislation changes, quick tip for you, if I just bring the slides down, from your company tasks, just go into the legislation option. As long as your process date is in the new tax year, it will show you legislation settings for this year. So for PAYE, for example, in Scotland, from the 6th of April, there is this new tax band, the 45% rate, and then the top rate of tax is increased to 48%. And that only applies to Scottish tax codes. There's no changes to the bands and rates in the rest of the UK. As we saw earlier, this employee rate of national insurance is updated with a legislation update, and you can view the other minimum wage rates for the other ages on the minimum wage tab. A couple of other legislation changes just to make you aware of. Statutory paternity pay has been reformed in 2024 to 25, and these changes apply to babies expected after the 6th of April. So paternity leave and pay can now be taken within the first 52 weeks following the birth or placement of the child. It used to only be the first 8 weeks, so they now have a year to take the leave and pay. And it can be taken as either a single block of 1 or 2 weeks, or 2 blocks of 1 week. So there can be a gap in between week 1 and week 2, and it can take place anytime within the first year of the baby's birth. Employees will need to give 28 days notice before the date they intend to take each period of leave. So the notice period for the dates of leave has been adjusted in line with these new rules. And I think Alice will show you a bit later that the SPP entry screen has also been updated to accommodate that change. And last bit of legislation just to be aware of is that there were changes to the working time regulations been introduced by the government to simplify holiday entitlement and holiday pay calculations. So that includes a definition of irregular hours workers and part-year workers. It introduces a method to calculate statutory holiday entitlement for these types of workers, and it introduces rolled up holiday pay as an alternative method to calculate the holiday pay. Now, I'm not going to lie, holiday pay and entitlement for irregularly paid workers is complex legislation. So I just wanted to make you aware of this because some of the changes apply to leave years beginning on or after the 1st of April. And we'll just signpost you to the gov.uk guidance, which you can read on this slide. So that's it from me for now. I'm going to bring Alice back and just going to have a quick run through of some of the new features and improvements in version 30. So over to you, Alice.
Thanks again, Duncan. Yeah, so a couple of new features and improvements to Sage 50 Payroll in version 30, some a little bit more obvious than others. Starting with probably the most obvious one, which is the new home page. Now this is set to your initial view when you first update to version 30. So it'll be the first thing you see when you log into the company. And I'll show you the home page in a moment, along with how to change the initial view. So you can customize whichever view you wanted to see when you first open the program. And Duncan also just mentioned the legislation and the changes to statutory paternity pay as well. And he did mention that the way that you record that in the program is slightly different now. So I will be showing you that as well in the demonstration. There's also some improvements to the P45 starter form. So from the new version 30 of Payroll, when you're entering a new employee, the P45 year-to-date fields aren't going to be available when they shouldn't be entered. So for example, if you had an employee who's left their previous employment in a different tax year, then you won't need to enter year-to-date figures as they aren't relevant for the current tax year. So there's some slight changes to that as well. We've also got some kind of behind the scenes improvements too. So all of the automatic updates will run with elevated admin privileges now. And there's also the option to amend the duty start date in the pensions module too, which previously involved sending your data in for repair. So let's take a little look at a couple of those changes, and I'll just turn my camera off. We'll go back to Payroll, and straight away you can see that home page here. So as I said, this is your initial view, but on here you've got some different tiles. So you've got welcome to the home page, key dates for payroll year end as well. And these do change from time to time. So at the moment, quite focused on payroll year end, and of course, welcoming you to this home page. But do keep an eye on it because it will change depending on the time of year, any hot topics and things as well. But for example, with the key dates, if you wanted to learn a little bit more about these, just click View the Calendar, and it's going to bring you straight to an article all about the key dates for payroll year end. So those dates that we mentioned earlier, of course, you've got the deadlines, the new tax year and things like that as well. And if you wanted to know what this date is, you do get a bit of information about them as well. So that's your kind of payroll year end key dates tile. You've also got one about the free webinars, checking for legislation updates as well. So that's probably quite a common one that will be used at the moment. So if you click on that, it does explain what Duncan's mentioned about applying the new NI changes as of the spring budget 2024. So it does explain how to do that. Obviously tools and check for legislation updates. So you've got that information there, nice and easily accessible. But it's essentially your kind of one-stop shop for all things payroll, really. So not only have you got them, but you've got the online services and things as well. And at the bottom, some quick links to Sage University, which is one of our great further support options. Payroll year end as well. So this will take you straight to the payroll year end hub with the different steps that we've gone through in the webinars. And legislation as well. So that will take you to payroll legislation. You can see, obviously, a nice article just summarising everything that kind of Duncan's gone over there as well. And that is your homepage. Now it is a new section on the left as well. So if you were in payroll, you can just click back to home to take a little look at that. Which is great there. And like I said, you can customize this initial view. So if you don't want to see the home page when you first open the program, all you need to do is go to View in the top left and Options. And once this window comes up, you're just going to click in the Environment tab, and you'll see for your initial view, you've got, it is kind of set to home normally, but I've changed that to Payroll. So you can change it to anything. Any of these sections on the bottom left, you can change it to. So if I wanted to see, for example, the calendar when I first open the program, I'd set that to calendar. Or if you want the payroll screen with your employees, just set that to payroll and then click OK. And that's kind of the home page there. And Duncan also mentioned changes to statutory paternity pay. And there is, like I say, a slightly different way that you're going to record that now. So if we pretend that my employee number 9, they've given me notice and they want to go on paternity leave, I can go to my payroll links and you'll see an option for recording paternity. So if I click on that, the quick SPP window comes up. This is my favourite way of entering paternity pay. I just think it's easy with everything in one place. But if we say that the date of birth is the 12th of April, and I check that entitlement, the main difference is here. So you can see this table, and this gives you the option to enter the last day of work for the first week and the second week of leave because of that change. So because they can take now non-consecutive weeks, I could say that the last day of work for the first week of leave, it might be the 11th of April, for example, but maybe they don't actually want to take the second week until, let's just say, October. So it allows you to now put in that second week as well. So you've got that option there. I'll just show you the other way as well, because you can enter paternity pay differently in the actual employee's record. So if I open up the record and go to absence, we can click on SPP just at the bottom. And if I pop in that same due date, so the 12th of April, we can say that they were actually born on the 11th. Just kind of go through the normal things here. And again, you've got that table at the bottom. But one difference with recording it in the employee's record, if we put in their last day of work for the first week, the 11th, it does also come up with this message. So it asks, are you entering 2 weeks of statutory paternity pay for the employee? And if they were, just click yes, and that automatically adds in that next week. So following straight on from the first one. But of course, if they change their mind, they've got the option to change that in here too. So we could change that to something a little bit later. Everything else for paternity pay and the way that you record it has stayed more or less the same. That's kind of the biggest difference. So we'll click OK and just save this person's record. I did mention some other changes, so a few more minor changes, and they are all covered in a really helpful article. I just want to show you where you can find that as well. So if you go to the Payroll Year End Hub, I've just got to this by going to sage.co.uk/PYE. So I'll go click on Sage 50 Payroll, and there is a whole section all about what's new in Sage 50 Payroll version 30. So do take a look at this article if you do have time, just to kind of summarise all of those changes we've gone over. And you can also watch this recording of the webinar back if you do want to remind yourself of anything there, but that's kind of everything summarised there.